I got kidnapped in the Virgin Islands once. By far one of the strangest weeks of my life. It was late June 2017, and we were at the Ritz-Carlton at St. Thomas. Now, this was a super weird period of my life because I had grown up really, really broke. Like, I was digging out quarters to go to McDonald's and get a McDouble. And at this point, my parents were doing well for the first time. I fully came out of my shell, and I was partying like a madman. I don't condone anything I did, but I mean unhealthy levels of partying. Like, I lost all my powerlifting high school muscle, and even my skinny friends said I was thin. But I figured it's all good. We're going to the Caribbean. Needless to say, my judgment at this time in my life was not as refined as it is now. So that's just the preface. The week started off normally. Drink a painkiller. Get to the hotel. Meet up with the work group. Drink a painkiller with the work group. Get on a boat. Drink painkillers on the boat. Snorkel. Drink painkillers after snorkeling. And then get off the boat onto St. John and drink bourbon and coffee to wake up. This was day one. Then we had to repeat all those steps to get back to St. Thomas in the hotel. The problem with this is that it all started at like 8 in the morning. And my family and me were going to go into Red Hook, the town on St. Thomas, to do some shopping. Now, I was just a boy, 18 years grown at the time. So my first instinct was to leave my family and trade a random local guy for cigarettes to show me around. So I find my local. He's showing me around. He's telling me all about the island, all the little historical buildings, the Father's Day festival, and then we get to the docks. These docks are like fateful docks in my life. And my local guy turns real ominous at this point. He's not smiling anymore. And he points off to a little island out in the distance in a super low, creepy voice that like nobody around could hear. He said, "Do you see that island over there? That island is called Pedophile Island. It's owned by a billionaire. They keep Russian kids there, and US presidents visit all the time. It is a shadow on our town." I don't know why I gave him that voice, but I was like, okay, dude. Like, you don't need to make up tall tales. I'll just get you another pack of Newports if you want to keep giving me the tour. Just keep showing me around and I'll keep giving you cigarettes. This is a weird little aside because it wasn't until 2 years later when the news hit mainstream that I realized that this guy was completely serious. It was just an open secret over there that Epstein's Island was going on. And I mean, like, I'm probably not special, and that guy probably tells all of his tourists about the island for cigarettes. But it's just crazy that years later, when I saw that on TV, I was like, damn, I was really close to that operation. And the only thing I took away from hearing this at the time was that, oh, if he's serious about what he said, that presidents come here, I'm probably pretty safe as a tourist. I didn't take the right things away from that. I didn't get the lesson he was trying to teach me. And I didn't know at the moment, but that little interaction, that little foreshadowing about Epstein's Island, basically was how the rest of the week went. So I decided, after he gave his little tour and was making up stories about this guy named Epstein, I decided I need to probably get back to the hotel. It's getting late. So I got on this stretch golf cart taxi, paid my fare. The problem was I fell asleep on it. And when I woke up, I was surrounded by a bunch of locals. I had no idea what I was doing, where I was. But then I was like, oh, thank God, there's 3 white people right there. I'm going to talk to them and maybe they can tell me where to go. 2 of them were from Texas, so I was like, hey, what's up, brother and sister? And then this cool lady was a local, She moved from like Michigan to the place, and she showed us around. So we partied up like we were playing Nazi zombies, and had the second wildest night of this week. She showed us the bars, and we hung out. She knew all the fishermen, so we hung out on like deep sea fishing boats, crushing beers and blasting cigs. I should have brought my tour guide. But a few hours in, they called it a night. It was like 10:30. And as soon as they walked out the door of the bar and I said my goodbyes, two of the funnest people on the work trip walk in. And all that stuff we just did, we do it again. They actually got the only recorded video of me dancing well with a bartender girl in existence because I don't know how to dance. Basically, the whole night was wholesome fun. But that's where the wholesome aspect of this trip comes to an end. The next day, the CEO of our little group's kid shows up, and another partner's kid show up. They were both late for some reason. And I got to talking to them because they're the only people my age on this trip. And it came up that I already knew my way around the island, and I could show them all the fun places. So that night we did much of the same. And it went just about as well as the night before, until the last stop. Of course, there we are. We end up at the docks again. I'm in my teens, they're in their early 20s, and I'm trying to hang with the boys and be cool, but they want to sow their wild oats. They want a pick-me-up and a girly bar. And as another brief aside, let me say that I have always hated strip clubs. I always found them too close to like a petting zoo, except you can't pet anything. And I felt the same way back then as I do now. Even at the most debauched point of my life, I didn't like them. But again, I didn't want to come off as boring and gay. So, seeing as I had the full tour the night before, I pointed right across the street, told them that's the spot. You see those pink neon lights? That's where you want to go. I know my way around. I'm a local, basically. I'm an island boy. So we're walking across the street, and we hear a voice. You want girls? I don't know why I'm giving him this voice. And it was a cab driver. And I was like, no. They want girls. I'm just showing them where the girls are at. And then he hits us with, we have the best girls on the island. Come with me. And we were so young and stupid. Like a couple seconds later, we're climbing into this guy's white van. We take a short drive back into Red Hook, and we end up in an alleyway. And we're just ignoring the red flags. This time the bar's lights are red LEDs, which is literally a red flag. We should have known better. But we go in, we have some drinks, start talking to the girls. I'm noticing there's no stage and no dancers, and a whole lot of little side rooms with curtains. The cab driver's still with us for some reason, hanging out with my young companions. And I'm getting kind of antsy. Finally, a girl walks up to us, or walks up to me, because I was kind of away from them. She takes my Louis Vuitton nighttime shades off. Like I said, I was a poser back then. She starts talking to me. And I know this is a business, so awkwardly I'm like, okay, how much are dances? Because I'm trying not to be rude. And she said, oh, no dance, but I'll give you a ride for $1,000. And that's when I realized what kind of establishment we had walked into. And I yelled to my friends in that instant, took my glasses off her face. I said, hey, one more shot and we gotta go. So at this point, we're walking out. I'm telling the driver, we need to go back to the dance bar with the dancers because we're not cave spelunkers. That's not what we asked for. And he's like, okay, but it would be 700 cab fare each. I just changed his voice again. And mind you, he's asking $2,100 from us. We're like I'm 18, they're 20, and we already paid our fare and gave him a fat tip. We tipped him like 20 each for a 5-minute drive. This is not a big island. At this point, I realized we're in a real pickle. At minimum, we're being extorted for money, and at worst, we're about to be kidnapped. One more aside into the psychology of 18-year-old me, because this is a very different person. 18-year-old me is very different than even the me at the beginning of this channel. If you go listen to videos from when I was a kid, I was not in a good headspace. Like I said, I had come out of my shell, but it didn't just stop at confidence and being a little more extroverted. I was a party animal with a substance-fueled ego. We partied every day until 5:30 in the morning. I wore a white suit half the time. Like I said, posers, right? And then I'd be at work at 6:30 a.m. Week after week after week. We were actual menaces in our hometown. And in my sleep-deprived, alcohol-induced delusional grandiosity, I got combative with them. I started wiggering out. My friends corralled me into the van, shoved me in the third row. The whole time I'm going off on this cab driver trying to extort us, basically. And it's escalating fast. Like, I'm screaming at him, I'm telling him, what do you think's gonna happen when word gets out that you kidnapped 2 white kids and a mixed kid like me? Like, I'm from Houston, bro. UGK, Texas for life. What do you know about being trill? Donald Trump is president. He's gonna drone strike your ass. That's what I was telling him. That's what I'm telling this guy in a position of power while I'm in the third row of his van while he's kidnapping us on an island next to Epstein's island. I don't have the power position here. Meanwhile, he's yelling threats right back at me. We're locking eye contact through the rearview mirror. Me in the third row, him in the driver's seat, locking eye contact, threatening each other. He's telling me, I would cut your throat and I will put my manhood in your mouth. And I said, do it, dude. I said, if you put your manhood in my mouth, I'm biting that shit off. With my dying breath, I'm biting that shit off. Call the cops. I'm telling him, call the police. I say, get the police. I start calling the police. My friends are telling me to shut the hell up. My friends are telling me, be quiet. Just give him the money, John. What does it matter? We just want to get home alive. Oh, but I wasn't having that, though. He eventually pulled over at an ATM in a random parking lot, and the police arrived. And I was like, thank God, law and order. Suddenly, I was on team law and order. So I started explaining to the police the situation. And the cop tells me, you shut your mouth and you'll pay this man. And my stomach sank when I realized that the law on this island was not on our side. And that this had to be some kind of common scam, some arrangement that they have organized, that they ran on all the tourists. So what do I do when I'm faced with all this? In my drunken stupor, I start screaming at the cops. All the same empty threats and big talk I was yelling at the cab driver. And they just gave up on me. I don't know why they didn't just kill me. That's what I would have done with me, probably. But eventually they got my friends to just pay their portion out of the ATM, and they decided that I guess I wasn't worth the trouble. At least that's what I thought. The truth is, at this point in my life when I was in big poser mode, the only reason I didn't pay the guy the money was because I was broke. Because I spent all my money partying at home. And I didn't want my friends or the cab driver or the crooked cops to know that I only had $200 in my bank account. That's how materialistic and crazy I was. I was willing to risk my life, maybe the lives of my friends, so that these criminals on an island didn't know I was actually just broke. I didn't want them to see my bank account decline when I tried to pull out $800. Oh, man. I said I wasn't in a good headspace. I'm not proud to talk about all this, by the way. I just think it's a fascinating, like, character study into myself. So anyways, he brings us back to the hotel. My friends go to their rooms. They don't say a word to me, man. Which made me feel really bad. It had to be like 3 in the morning. And I'm talking to the gate guard and I'm shaking. And I'm just, because he's the nicest person I've seen in like 6 hours. He told me to be safe and to understand where I'm walking and just watch out. I'm on an island. I'm not in the US really, even though it's a territory. So at this point, the hangover's starting to kick in. I walked down to the moonlit bay where I was drinking painkillers on a boat just the day before, and I just freaking broke down. It's crazy. I've never experienced anything like it. Like, I didn't feel it in the moment when we were in the cab and talking to the cops because of the adrenaline and alcohol. But all that stuff gets to you. Turns out you can't go through something like that without, especially at 18, without like that rattled me to my core. Like, what the hell? I've been living in Texas my whole life, never had a crazy situation. And then I just get myself into this like an idiot. So anyways, the next day was overcast. My friends didn't talk to me at all. And I was drinking it all away. It was our last night at the Ritz. We had an award banquet that evening, and I was smashed at that banquet. My dad did really well that year at work, and he won some cartoonishly large check like you see in TV shows. And at that point, I'd had enough. Like, I wasn't mad about it. It was overwhelming after the pictures. And I went to the outside bar and just kind of sat there drinking by myself. And I'm sitting there, and there's this group of like 50-something-year-olds at one table over, and they're playing one of my favorite songs at the time on a little Bluetooth speaker. And I kind of called out to them, just yelled something in approval about the song. And a couple seconds later, I turn around, and there is a beautiful Russian woman sitting right on top of me. And she was from that table, and she must have been going through some kind of midlife crisis, because she's sitting there asking me what I think of her, if I think she's pretty, if I would date someone her age, what guys my age think about people her age. She's trying to kiss up on me, and then bam. Suddenly I'm looking the other way. This is all happening so fast, but when I'm looking the other way now, I don't know what happened. Glasses are on the ground, shattered. And I realized that an old guy had walked up and just clocked me right in the chin. And I was like, what's the hubbub about? I was like, are you married or something, you weirdo? Was that your husband? And then this other guy at the table was like, no, I am. And this is where my hatred of swingers starts. This is the origin story of why I hate swingers. It was almost too much for me. Between the kidnapping attempts, like just hours, 15 hours before, and then swingers now, this is all too much. This is already the most chaotic 24 hours of my life. Now I'm in the swingers nest. Anyways, the Russian lady apologized to me, and we kept talking, yapping. She clearly had some kind of confidence problem. And I decided I could at least walk around the resort grounds with her and talk to her. Maybe listening to her problems would take my mind off of my problems. By the time we were done with our walk, and I'd listened to all of her problems, called it a night, I get back to my hotel room, and I realize, I left my phone in here all night. Why do I have 150 text messages and missed calls from the friends I got kidnapped with and my parents? Turns out, while I was walking around with that lady, the cab driver came back, and he ran into the lobby where everyone I knew from the banquet was hanging out, my dad, the friends I got taken with, and he said, "Where is that asshole with the hair? I'm going to kill him." This guy came back to kill me. And he yelled that out in the lobby in front of everyone I know. So my dad ended up paying him the $700 and just to get him off my back. And I hate that he had to do that. That's so embarrassing. But anyways, they were calling and texting me just to make sure he didn't come get me after I guess they thought he left. He said, "Where's that asshole with the hair? I'm going to kill him." Oh, and that was the end of that. The Virgin Islands are an archipelago of freaks and weirdos. And I had to face the fact that I was one of them. And I didn't like that. Like, this trip was one of the biggest wake-up calls that I needed to get my life together. And I did in the next few months. I started turning my life around, getting serious. I remember getting on the plane the next morning, and the Russian lady texted me that her and her husband would fly me out to San Diego to their house if I found him a girl. That's crazy. People are messed up, man. That's why things are falling apart, stuff like that. And the fact that places like this exist, people like me back then exist, crooked cops, Russian swingers, Epstein Island, painkillers on tap. I don't know. The Caribbean is an overrated experience, I'll say. And I never really want to go back after that. This was my small taste of movie-level debauchery. And it tasted like shit. The moral of the story is that I wouldn't recommend it. Be careful where you go and be careful who you trust. Stay out of trouble. Don't do that. Keep it to the movies, because I tried to live out the movies when I was 18, and I did a lot more stupid stuff. This is just the pinnacle of it. But I was just sitting around posing. Don't be a poser. One more thing before I end the video. I thought I couldn't trust my friends after that trip. I thought they kind of got Stockholm Syndrome, turned their back on me in the heat of the moment. But years later, on another business trip, I saw them again. And we started talking. This time they told me that the reason they told me to shut up and were acting like I should just pay the guy money, because I started yelling at them too, by the way, in the caf. I started calling them spineless and stuff. The reason they were telling me all this stuff is because from the second row of the minivan, they could see the cab driver's knife. He had it in his hands. He was like white knuckling that knife. I just didn't know about it because I was in the third row. So I guess I did have some people looking out for me. Anyways, this is just a little classic story time segment. Since I don't think I've done one of these since the old videos from when I was like 13. Hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope that you found it maybe entertaining and maybe you could derive some weird lesson from this. But anyways, I'll see you in the next video, and thank you for listening. Take care.